Welcome to Inside Athletic Training, a podcast from the Professional Baseball Athletic Trainer Society and the ultimate destination for athletic training professionals, students, and educators looking to learn more about sports medicine and athletic training. In each episode, we'll dive headfirst into conversations with experts in the field, bringing you insights, stories, and cutting-edge information about athletic training and sports medicine. This week on Inside Athletic Training, we welcome in Brad Pearson, the Vice President of Sports Medicine and Performance with the Boston Red Sox. Enjoy the show. All right, Brad, welcome to Inside Athletic Training. Really excited to have you on. You're currently in the second year as the VP of Sports Medicine and Performance after spending 7 years prior as the Red Sox head athletic trainer. We will get into all those details about your career path and your current role with the club in a bit here soon. But to start today, I'd love to learn more about your background and kind of what paths led you to where you are today. So if you don't mind sharing with the listeners a bit about maybe where you're from, were you an athlete growing up, and also how you found a passion for athletic training.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me. Really excited to participate in this podcast. I think it's a great thing and something that I really wish I had available to me when I was a young athletic trainer. Where I came from is a small town in Vermont. It's where I was born and raised, and played a lot of sports while I was there, including baseball. But really, soccer, basketball were my favorite sports playing during my high school career, and that's really where the athletic training passion was born, is out of being part of a team. And something that I think carry with me today is that team atmosphere. I knew I wasn't going to play professionally. I probably wasn't going to play collegiately. And I wanted to find something that I could capture that same feeling of a group dynamic that was pulling all on the same rope to a common goal. And thankfully, I was able to find athletic training as a profession, and where I could still be on the sidelines, I could still be in the dugout, and feel like I was part of a team. And that's really the way where my passion came from.
Yeah, I think a lot of you and your colleagues across the league have similar experiences in loving sports and growing up playing sports and realizing, the dream ends for all of us pretty quickly. And getting into athletic training is a great way to stay in sports. So cool to hear you echo that statement as well. Well, Brad, I like to start each show by kind of sharing some info about your career path. I know you spent time in so many roles in the minor leagues when you were coming up, including the minor league medical coordinator in 2008 to 2012. A lot of our listeners are younger students or young professionals looking to kind of be in a position that you are one day. Can you talk about the importance of that minor league experience and kind of how it helped shape you as an athletic trainer when you were coming up?
Yeah, absolutely. I certainly would not be where I am today as a athletic trainer, and certainly an athletic trainer in baseball, had I not had my minor league athletic training experiences. I started very young. I think I was 22 or 23 when I got my first job in the minor leagues. And you may think you know something about athletic training or sports medicine at that stage of your career, but there's just an ocean of things you don't know yet. And so it really became my second education. And I was lucky enough to have an opportunity to kind of spread my wings throughout different facets of minor league baseball, and really hone on my skills of problem solving, and learn from people. And that was something that really was the most important part, I think. I would spend every game pretty much sitting next to somebody and asking a lot of questions, whether it was one of the senior athletic trainers that I was working with in spring training, or a player or a coach, and just kind of pepper them with questions about baseball and try to learn as much as I could. And it was a really valuable experience. And some of the friendships that I gained during that time are some of my best friends today.
And you talked about asking questions and to those senior athletic trainers you spent time around when you were coming up. You've worked with a ton of awesome and super talented individuals throughout your career. But when you were breaking into the game, maybe those early years in the minor leagues where you kind of had no clue but thought you knew a lot and you were just trying to soak things up, who were some of the key role models in your life that kind of showed you the ropes and walked you through how athletic training in pro baseball really works?
Yeah, man, I have so many. It probably take up too much time in the podcast to list all of them, but I'll start with a few key people that really shaped my career and had a major impact on me. And first and foremost was Jim Young, who was our minor league athletic training coordinator at the time, and hired me and really taught me how to be a professional. Had a lot of that he taught me about work ethic and what it was to be an athletic trainer in professional baseball and go about your business the right way. So much gratitude for him. And then on a more, mentorship and role model, Jim Rowe, who went to my college, spoke at an event at my college, and just was somebody that I always looked up to. He was an integral part of the 2004 Red Sox World Series, and really took me under his wing when I arrived as a Red Sox athletic trainer. And this made me feel welcome, which I always appreciated. And then, Paul Assard, who is a head trainer here, and he's a legend in PBATS and has an amazing career. And just watching him go about his business as the head athletic trainer, and I still can't do what he does. He's just his ability to command a room and be funny and make it fun while still getting the work done is something that I aspire to do in my own career, and he does it better than anybody. And then I just a few more, if you don't mind. I have to have a shout out to Greg Barajas, who was in AAA when I was in Single A, and we became friends, and he was somebody that I still talk shop with and just have that kind of professional relationship, but also a personal relationship with being able to talk about anything in baseball or athletic training. And then clinically, I had kind of two renaissances in my career in terms of getting better as a clinician. And the first go around was with Mike Reinold when he came in and had just a different perspective and experience that really shaped how I went about the first half of my career, and things that I learned from him I still utilize today, and we do with the Red Sox. And he certainly had an impact on the industry. And then Dan Dyrek, who a lot of people probably don't know, but I suggest people on this call to Google him. People listening to Google him, because he's kind of a secret rock star in the sports medicine world, and work with people like Larry Bird and others. And the things that I learned from him, I can't even imagine. Going through my career without having that opportunity. I'm so fortunate.
Yeah, so many really influential people there that you just mentioned. One that stands out specifically to me in working with you guys in PBATS is the stuff you mentioned about Paul Assard and his ability to, get in front of people, like you said, make things fun, but also have such command over an individual situation is something I think we all wish we could do. Paul is just the best in the world at that. So no surprise that he's one of the main mentors you had coming up, and obviously he wins wherever he goes, which is a plus there.
Absolutely.
When you look back on your career and kind of getting started, and think about how young you were and what that was like. And then now the position that you're in and such a huge role with the Red Sox and so much success over your career. I'm wondering what advice you would give to a college student or a young professional, maybe getting into their first spring training, and trying to make a mark in athletic training in pro baseball. Is there a skill or a personality trait or something like that you really think is important for those younger athletic trainers?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's both, right? There's a personality that lends itself to success in this industry, and I think also a skill set as well. And I think the combination of the two can really allow somebody to have some success in baseball as an athletic trainer. For me, I think some of the personality traits that I've had, and something that maybe I would share was, as soon as I knew that I wanted to be an athletic trainer, and specifically in baseball, everything I did from that point on was a pursuit of that goal. So I tried to prioritize that, and things that were not part of that goal, if it wasn't going to help me reach the goal that I wanted, I tried to minimize spending too much time on that. And so that's how I went about my business. If I went to grad school, the courses and the classes that I signed up for, I asked myself, will this help me as an athletic trainer in baseball? If I chose a school for grad school, for example, it was, I had some opportunities at some bigger schools, more, famous schools like Florida or UNC, but they couldn't guarantee that I could work with the baseball team as a graduate assistant. So, I chose UMass, where I was given that ability to work with the baseball team. So it's a laser focus on what your goals are and really trying to prioritize going after them. Some more things I would say is, looking at difficult situations. Look, minor league baseball can be challenging, mm-hmm. and some of your early jobs are not always going to be the most glamorous. But if you look at them from a standpoint of turning difficult situations into opportunities and understand that you're going to get better for going through something difficult, I think that kind of pairs with the idea of, keeping your eye on the prize. So, for example, if you're understaffed, as I was in some of my early working at a collegiate setting, I would say to myself, good, like I'm seeing twice as many players and patients as the next guy, so that's going to make me twice as better. And taking that attitude into the work that you do, I think really can shape your personality as an athletic trainer and will serve you well. And from the skill side of it, of course, look, we want to have really intelligent, put together athletic trainers in our organization that are able to understand anatomy, exphys, kinesiology, properties of tissue deformation, manual therapy skills. Those, of course, are prerequisites for being a great athletic trainer. But I really think, young students and young athletic trainers should focus on the ability to problem solve and have critical thinking skills. That is really what the job is about. When you break it down to somebody's having an injury, especially in baseball, where some of these things are chronic in their etiology, you want to be able to problem solve. How did this happen? Can we address the issue so it doesn't come back? And that takes a lot of critical thinking and problem solving skills.
Yeah, really great insight there for students. There's so much that goes into the athletic training world. Like you said, critical thinking, problem solving, persistence. It's really a total package. I know there's not one singular piece of advice out there for the young professionals. One thing you just mentioned, which I find interesting, is you talked about being understaffed in the early days and how that actually was an added benefit, and you welcome that challenge. Most of our listeners who are into athletic training now know that performance staffs are growing very rapidly. You're one of the guys looking back on the early days, as you mentioned. You've probably seen big league staffs of just 2 people to now where there could be 7, 8, 9 people on an athletic training, sports medicine, and performance staff. Can you talk about the growth of the profession and more specifically how staffs have changed and grown really just to suit the needs of both the players and the athletic trainers?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's no question that things have evolved over time. And I think for the benefit of the players, which is the most important thing, when I was in the minor leagues, it was one-stop shopping. So, if I was the athletic trainer, I was the strength coach, I was the nutritionist, I was sports scientist, not to mention some other duties that go with being in that position that may not even be related to sports medicine. So I think what happened was that we had some really great people here, and I think the industry as well, and the front offices started to recognize that, hey, this can be a competitive advantage. And if we can get our players treated in a preventative fashion and not just reacting to injuries when they happen, we're going to be more competitive and our players are going to be able to perform better. And it kind of snowballed from there. So, in that mindset, you have, your veteran players who were particularly the ones who would get treatment, and the young players might poke their head into the training room and see that it was busy and be chased out of there. And that's just not conducive to performance. And And I think people started to realize that. So you need a staff to be able to accommodate the players' needs and have that one-on-one type availability for them. And then, looking into different areas, the sports science side of things has really blossomed in baseball and in the sports industry, as well as looking at the analytics side of things and researching what can be measured and how we can improve our players through careful calculation and workload management, for example, and vetting technology and things that are going to ultimately make our team more efficient, so we're spending the right time in the right places. And so I do think that the last thing is, like, having a big staff as we do, the players are going to find somebody that they trust and relate to, and you have a different skill set and a different personality with each athletic trainer or staff member you have on your team. So being able to match those people up together really makes it a better area of trust for the players, where they feel like they can find the person to work with that they feel most comfortable with. And that's really helped a lot.
Yeah, that's one thing that I find really, really interesting is you guys are athletic trainers and sports medicine professionals, but you're also humans, and you're having conversations with players, whether they're talking about something happening at home or a game or anything like that. It could almost be like a therapist type of role when you're working on players. For the younger athletic trainer out there, when you walk into a clubhouse in the big leagues for the first time, how do you go about finding your way, working with players, getting trust with players, but not kind of, going too much in people's way and when they already have a person they work with mostly? How do you kind of navigate that situation early when you're not so familiar with players in the clubhouse?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one that I can definitely relate to firsthand. So when I was first in the major leagues as an assistant athletic trainer, the big dogs and the veterans all had their staff athletic trainers that they were comfortable with, the head trainer, people who've been there for a long time. And, you can feel left out of the group by not being able to treat those individuals. However, it's a big team. And as I said, there are a lot of players that would otherwise slip through the cracks. So, my goal was any young player from AAA or someone who came in from another team that maybe was a bench player, a utility player, a young player, I was going to scoop them up and put them on my schedule to treat and take care of. And through that, kind of, you start building some confidence, and you start and those players are looking for the same thing, as you said, like,
Sure.
They're human beings. So they're walking into a major league clubhouse with, some icons of the game like David Ortiz and John Lester and John Lackey in the room, and they're trying not to get in their way. And so you can kind of find each other, and that trust starts building there. And then in my case, you kind of keep your head down working, and then you look up and you're like, wait a minute, I'm treating the main guys. I'm treating the iconic players now. And that's kind of the nature of things, I think.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I find most interesting about the profession is, the ability of someone like yourself to climb through the minor leagues, but also, you're climbing those ranks with players who you build that trust and relationships with, and, ultimately being in the same organization for a while, like you have, really has its added benefit there. Well, Brad, shifting gears a bit, you lead an awesome staff there in Boston, very impressive and diverse. Men like Brandon Henry, Masai Takahashi, John Joachim, and a ton of others who we could name. Can you share a bit about how you handle, as the leader there, making sure that all those staff members continually develop and gain individual skills and confidence and get a chance to kind of flourish when there is so much quality leadership at the top and so many individuals in the room?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, so blessed to have the opportunity to work with Brandon and JJ and Masai, Anthony, and the rest of the crew, Dave Ferreira. We've been together a long time. So that adds a lot to the trust. That adds a lot to being able to give each other mutual respect and really be a team that can lean into each other's skills and backgrounds to the advantage of the organization. So managing that, I think the key here is that we all may be different, come from different places, but we share a common vision, and we have, the common traits in our staff is a relentless work ethic. There's no ego, and they make it about the players, and they trust and respect each other, which allows people to, if they're having trouble with a certain player's injury, bring that other staff member over to take a look and provide some feedback. And that really requires you to let your guard down, and to let somebody kind of check under the hood of the work you've been doing. Not everybody can do that, because you don't want to feel like you're failing or you have some insufficiency. But it's that ability to lean into each other's strengths and weaknesses to make the group as a collective better is what makes the team as a whole a successful sports medicine team. And so what I try to do is assign each of our staff members into areas where they can flex their muscles of the things that they're good at, and and that can be shared with the rest of the group. So those tools eventually are found into each other's toolboxes, but also put them into positions where maybe it's something they haven't been exposed to as much in the past. And if we can find a role for them where now they do get that exposure and make them a more well-rounded athletic trainer, and learn a little bit something that they haven't had an opportunity to, they're going to be a better athletic trainer, and we're going to be better at it as a staff.
And you mentioned, Brad, being together for a long time with the group there in Boston and all the great names you mentioned. That continuity in Boston is incredibly impressive when you look around the league, and so much turnover from year to year within athletic training. So being together for that long and avoiding that turnover, I know you mentioned a couple things right there that probably help with that and impact that, and your ability to just put people in positions to be successful and develop and gain confidence. Is there anything else you credit? Maybe it's just from top to bottom at the organization in Boston, but anything you credit for being able to keep your staff together for so long?
It's certainly not anything I can take credit for, but it's the people. They're great.
Yeah.
They're great athletic trainers, and I think the organization is thankfully smart enough to recognize that. But they're great athletic trainers because even though they've been in baseball a long time, and in many cases been in the big leagues for a long time, they're never satisfied with status quo. They're always trying to get better, and we have to, because the industry changes, and there's always somebody out there that's nipping at your heels. That especially outside of baseball, in the world of social media and all these other sports medicine facilities that pop up, they can draw attention, to what they're doing. And so we have to compete with that, so it's easy because they want to get better, and it's always been a drive. I know one example. We won the World Series in 2018, and 5 days later we were having a meeting about our shoulder programs, and we weren't satisfied with it. We wanted to make it better. So, that's just an example of, we have to keep striving to get better every day, every season. And that's what keeps them good, and that's what keeps them here.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And obviously a hugely motivated staff there in Boston. You're the leader of the staff, as we mentioned. I want to get into a bit more about your role specifically. So you were the head athletic trainer for a long time with the club, came up with the organization. A lot of our listeners might know what the head athletic trainer does on a day-to-day basis. But when you get up into a position that you're in with the Red Sox, VP of Sports Medicine Performance, walk us through some details about the duties and responsibilities and kind of the day-to-day for you.
Yeah, sure. I think it is something that is probably less known about in this type of role, and I think it could be individual to a particular organization. And so for me, again, been humbled by the fact that I've been able to stay with this one organization for a long time. And by doing so, I have experienced a lot, in different roles, as you've mentioned. And so a big part of what my role is able to connect with the people that are now serving in those particular jobs for the organization as athletic trainers, as strength and conditioning coaches, as other professionals, and provide oversight and insight to help them do their job better. Really, it comes back to what I had said about problem solving and critical thinking, and spending time with each facet of the department to see where we can grow that area, where are the barriers, what are the sticking points that we need to improve upon to make that more successful and really ultimately impact the players. So put the analogy out there of, in the past, I might have been a member of the band. I may have been the leader of the band. And now I'm kind of the person who puts the cassette or the CD or the MP3, whatever we're doing these days, and push play. So I let the band play. I'm pushing play on the whole operation. So it's kind of a 30,000 foot view of how things work. So the day to day for me is coming in and looking at reports that are being produced by the various areas of sports medicine and performance, and staying current with where those players are being impacted from that particular part of the department. Choosing to have meetings with the requisite leadership in those areas of the department. Have meetings with our GM, our front office leadership, to ensure that we're getting the support we need for those areas. We're problem solving things that are coming up. And the one piece that's my favorite part really is that I still take time to go down to the training room and be connected there, which I think is really, really critical to the success of my role, is to know what's going on in the training room in the place where I grew up. So I'm lucky enough to have had, I can keep my hand in some rehab cases, and got to rehab Trevor Story last year, for example. And that was just a rewarding experience to have that time to do that. Whereas when I was head athletic trainer, sometimes you don't get as much time to do things like that. So that, I think, would be how I would describe things.
Yeah, definitely a lot going on there. Busy job, leading the charge, like you said, press and play, and putting your people in the right place to succeed is I'm sure a very gratifying position. When I talk to people in your roles across the league, there's a lot of different duties that are much different than what you did coming up as an athletic trainer. And you just mentioned that being in the clubhouse, rehabbing somebody for the year is really what you love to do. So when you look back on your time as an assistant athletic trainer and the head athletic trainer for the Red Sox, is there part of you that really misses that camaraderie, hands-on experience being in the clubhouse as compared to your current role?
Oh, sure. I think that there's trade-offs to both roles. It's funny how perspective changes, as you experience different things. And when I was an assistant, sometimes I felt, I had been a coordinator prior to that, where I was in a lot of meetings and making a lot of decisions for the minor leagues. And then coming up to the major league team, my focus went from a very wide focus of a whole minor league system to a very narrow focus of, the handful of players, half a dozen players that I worked with, and covering the bench and triaging injuries. And it took an adjustment to that, but it really became quite gratifying in working with those players and the relationships you develop as a result of that. And I can tell you that I do miss kind of, one of the most fun times of the day is hanging out in the training room, treating somebody with the banter that goes on, and people ribbing each other, talking about the game, talking about something going on in the world, and working on the player at the same time. It's something that I do miss at times. I don't miss how tired my hands were. I do know. I remember at the end of the season back in those days, I probably couldn't open a bottle of water with my fingers. So my hands feel a lot better.
Yeah, it's like you said, always a trade-off. You have so much responsibility and impact on the club now, but obviously there's much less time for the day-to-day using your hands on players, which I'm sure you like you said, you miss sometimes. Well, Brad, one thing I can't have somebody on the show from the Red Sox organization without talking about so much of the winning and success of the club during your time there. So you were on staff in 2013 for the World Series championship. Also, obviously, the head athletic trainer, as we mentioned, for the 2018 World Series championship as well. Just such a cool time for the Red Sox, the city of Boston, and your staff. Talk about those years and all that winning and kind of what it felt like to get to the mountaintop as an athletic trainer and be the champs at the end of each year.
Yeah, first of all, this super humbling, and I'm very grateful for having that opportunity to win World Series. There's so many great athletic trainers that have not had that opportunity by no fault of their own. It's a really difficult thing to do, and it takes a lot of hard work, and it also takes a little bit of luck. And that's why I'm always so happy when I see long veteran athletic trainers winning a World Series, because it's something that I hope that everybody gets to experience. So it's never not front of mind for me that how lucky I am to have experienced that. When it comes to the ones that you mentioned, 2013, as I said, I was an assistant athletic trainer, and it's just so interesting that I could have two totally different experiences for doing the same thing, basically winning a World Series. In 2013, I was kind of just going along for the ride. I was having fun. Yeah, sure, we had a lot of work, but really you just busted your butt all day, worked really long hours. Like I said, physically demanding job to get everybody treated the way they need to. Our staff was a lot smaller at the time, but just a magical season. We had the marathon bombing tragedy, and it really galvanized our team. It was a cast of characters that I don't think that I will ever get to experience again quite to that level. The Johnny Gomes and Shane Victorino, Dustin Pedroia, David Ortiz. I mean, these are just names that I think are just incredible people, but really drove a culture of team that I identified with, and I just had a great time going through it. That chemistry, to me, it has been unmatched. And so it's just a lot of fun. And 2018 was a completely different experience for me as the head athletic trainer and director of sports medicine at the time. I felt the weight of that responsibility, and we knew we had a really good team. And, it was actually even comment on that injuries would be the thing that would be the only thing that could derail a 108 win team. And, I wore that pretty significantly from the responsibility of steering the ship in the right direction and keeping everybody on the field. But it ended up being, thankfully, very satisfying professionally. We had a lot of initiatives that we had started at the beginning of the season with a new manager in Alex Cora, with a new pitching coach in Dana Levangie, and the rest of the staff that we wanted to do. And some interesting things with workload. We had just started sports science at that time, and by hiring our first sports scientist. And if you go back and look, we actually had some of our starting pitchers do a deload period in September and throwing 3 innings, 4 innings, 2 innings, depending on their workload calculations, leading up to the playoffs to ensure that they had something in the tank to go the distance. And I'm happy to say that it couldn't have worked any better. And it was just a very proud moment for me professionally to be, the head athletic trainer for that, when you get, as you say, to the top of the mountain and feel that success. And ultimately, it was an incredibly talented team. And for me to have a small part in their success was just really gratifying.
And an interesting note there for the sports medicine enthusiasts, out there is you talked about starting sports science, hiring a sports scientist in 2018, and kind of analyzing things maybe a bit differently. Things are now progressing faster than ever in the profession. So much with analytics, technology, and innovation, as you see all year round. Where do you see the profession of athletic training going in maybe the near future with so much innovation happening?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think, as you know, our whole world could be turned upside down with the advent of AI, and how that could impact things like sports medicine is yet to be discovered. But I do think it's going to have some role to play, and hopefully it's in a role that enhances player care. There's so many questions that we don't have time to sort through data, to sort through minutia to answer. And if you can have a computer doing that for you, it really, I think, has potential to target the most impactful areas of where you should be putting your focus. And so I'm hopeful that it just takes our ability to care for players and reduce injuries first and foremost, but also care for them and take it to a different level. I do think also in the biotech side of things that that's another burgeoning area that is just getting more and more advanced as each year goes by. And I think it's going to be really fun to see what advancements they can make in, things like stem cells and growing tissue and, cartilage, for example, of replacement that can be grown in a lab and then replaced into the body to prolong somebody's career. I think about some of the players who've had careers cut short due to injuries like that, and it'll be really awesome if those things can help players play longer. But I do hope that the human element isn't lost through the technology, because ultimately these are human beings, and I do think no matter how much AI and technology influences the game, that you can't forget that. And there are things that happen that defy logic, and why a player who has an injury such as an occult disc or a ligament tear and still is able to compete and play is something that I think hopefully it remains part of the game, and something that people still appreciate.
Yeah, clearly things have changed a ton since you broke into the game back in the day, and obviously they're going great places. But like you said, the human element and kind of the idea of what you mentioned earlier of hanging out in the clubhouse and building those relationships and talking to people and growing as a group there is so important, and hopefully that is not something that gets lost along the way. Well, Brad, really appreciate your insight today. To wrap up today's episode, we're going to finish with a quick Q&A segment called Extra Bases. I'll ask you 4 quick questions and let you kind of share some insight about yourself and some of your favorite things about athletic training. So we will kick it off at first base. You have so much great experience in this league, so much time in the big leagues. I'm curious, what is your favorite athletic training room outside of the home room in Boston to work in across the big leagues?
Yeah, I think I'm a person who's nostalgic. So I'm going to say St. Louis, because I have great memories from the World Series. And I'll share one. Every time I'm in that training room, I just have this memory of when I was in the training room during the game. I think it was game 4 or 5, and Shane Victorino was in the hot tub staying warm to get ready in case he had to get into the game. And I think it was Johnny Gomes hit a home run. He's jumping up and down in the tub and wants to get out and high five people. And because we're in baseball and we care about superstition, right? No, get back in the tub. You're not allowed out of the tub. So until the rally was over, he had to stay in the tub the whole time. And every time I go to St. Louis, I think about that, and it makes me smile.
Yeah, that's a great story there. And like you said, if you're winning, you're scoring, you got to stay in there. That's awesome to hear. Moving on to second base, you and your colleagues across the league have such a great vantage point for every single game. You're actually in the dugout with the players and the managers. Very few people can say they've ever done something like that. So I know Fenway is incredible, historic. So many people's answers to this question. But in your opinion, what's your favorite big league stadium to watch a game from the dugout?
For me, I think I have to say Yankee Stadium. I grew up a Red Sox fan. I think when the rivalry is at its best, going into that stadium is just a really, gives you chills when the crowd is really wild and we're at the heat of Red Sox versus Yankees, and being in that dugout, to be able to experience that is pretty special.
And then, like you mentioned, New York and Boston, two amazing baseball cities, incredible rivalries. Third question here. When you're on the road, do you have a favorite city to visit?
Yeah, that was a tough one to think about, because I enjoy elements of every city I go to. I try to find something unique to that city and make that part of my routine. But I've always just enjoyed going to Seattle. I love the ballpark, but I enjoy the city, the mountains, the ocean is just like a unique part of the world. And I think that would be my vote.
Yeah, definitely one of the only places in the country you're going to get the mountains and the ocean together. I think we've had a handful of people agree that Seattle is just one of the best places to visit. Moving on to home plate, the last question for today. Really excited to hear your answer here. It might take some jogging your memory from the old days, but when you broke into pro baseball and the big league specifically, did you have a welcome to the big leagues moment at any point during those first couple of years?
I've probably had one almost every day, I think, but whether it was the first time I flew on a chartered jet and I'm like, wait a minute, I get to have this food, and it's just, I don't have to buckle my seatbelt if I don't want to, things like that. But I would say to me, the biggest welcome to the big leagues moment probably was in Game 6 of the World Series in 2013, which I know I had been in the big leagues, a little bit of time for this, but it was just kind of an epic moment. It was Game 6. I was getting everybody ready for the game. I ran upstairs to the player lounge to try and just grab a bite to eat right before the game. And I heard all this commotion that had been going up there, and I didn't realize what it was that Kenny Chesney and Sully Erna from Godsmack were just jamming out playing guitar. This is like 20 minutes before the game started, and Kevin Millar's up there. A bunch of other players that weren't on our team were up there, but it was like a party up there with these great musicians playing, acoustic guitars and singing. And I was like, this is amazing. This is such a spectacle, and then to go out there and, win Game 6 that night, it was just a really special memory that I have, and really, I think, answers the question well.
Yeah, I think you had a very unique cast of characters there that year in Boston, and that makes total sense that a scene like that would occur. Well, Brad, really appreciate all that insight and you sharing so much about yourself and your career in athletic training. Always appreciate your dedication to PBATS and the profession, and we wish you and the staff there in Boston nothing but the best of luck this upcoming season.
Thank you so much, and I really appreciate you inviting me.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Inside Athletic Training. We hope you've gained valuable insights, inspiration, and knowledge to fuel your athletic training journey. If you enjoyed today's show, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review on your favorite platform. And also, stay connected with us on pbats.com for more news about athletic training and sports medicine.